Okay, so welcome everybody to another Euro discussion from WoSo Collective. I'm Kudzi. I'm joined by André once again. And basically today we're just going to do a quick roundup of all the group matches, the group stages really. And then depending on how quickly we go through that, we'll readdress our brackets at the end. So André, say hello to the people.
Hello, people. I am sad. I'm tired, but I'm also sad, and we'll probably get into why I'm sad. And I'm sure I'm going to get made fun of during this. So I'm preempting everybody. You'll feel my immense pain very soon.
Okay, so we're going to start off with this time around. We're actually going to do it in order. We're going to do the groups in order instead of messing around like we did last time. So the first one that we're going to go for is Group A. As everyone knows, England finished as the group winners. Austria finished as the second place team. Norway finished in third. And Northern Ireland finished in fourth, which I think Northern Ireland and England were the only two we got right in that group.
Yeah, well, okay. 50% ain't bad.
Yeah, 50% isn't bad at all, you know, all things considered, because who expected? But anyways, we'll discuss that. So let's start right at the top, right? Let's start with England. I think the things that I wanted to just go over with England very quickly was one, the level of goals, or the amount of goals, actually both, the amount of goals and the level of technique of the goals surprised me for me, like genuinely surprised me. I didn't, not to say that I didn't think that they had the capabilities or the talent to be that good going forward. You know, they have the players to do so, but I wasn't expecting that at all. I knew they were going to win I like we had discussed in our preview, we were pretty sure they were going to win the group, but not by the score lines that we got.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing that I wanted to do. I don't know if you wanted to touch on that first before we go forward.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to Serena. I mean, just absolute masterful job. I mean, we haven't seen, you know, it's tough because like in the World Cup qualifiers, of course, you saw like England score a bunch of goals versus like Latvia or something, right? So like we've seen them score a lot of goals, but it's been against competition who hasn't quite been, you know, in the same league as what you would get like in the finals of a Euros competition. So now you're looking at a team that's going up against, and granted, not the strongest group, but you are still getting a very cohesive England side. They know what they want to do, and they have not found so far anybody that can really stop them from doing it. And that's been great to see. I mean, I have, you know, had a lot of affinity for my girlfriend Kirby. So I love that she's been in central and playing that 10 role very well, giving her a lot of space. Shout out to the Jonathan Liu, who wrote a great piece about how Fran Kirby finds space, manipulates defenders and everything. I thought it was an excellent piece that describes her game very well. But I mean, it's those wingers, isn't it? I mean, yeah, geez, just they haven't come up with against anybody who has the outside backs that can contain them, and that's been a big problem.
Yeah, and so now that we're actually talking about the wingers, we're going to talk about players. I had 4 players in mind that I wanted to speak about. First of all, I want to say a mea culpa to Millie Bright. I feel like I owe her one because I'm going to be completely honest. I haven't been always her biggest fan. I always thought that, especially with Chelsea, you know, Magda Eriksson used to cover a lot for her.
Yeah.
And even with England, when she was partnered up with Steph Houghton, I was like, oh, that's a bit sketchy. They're a bit unstable there. But I mean, not to say that England have been tested really, because when you think about it, they really haven't.
Yeah.
But when they have been sort of tested, or when, you know, the other side has tried to get at them, she's dealt with everything. Everything. Whether it's like the crosses in the box, whether she's passing out from the back, whether it's her positioning, whether it's, you know, positioning everyone else in front of her or around her, along with Leah Williamson. I think she's been excellent. And then I would say probably one of the best players that England have had so far, if you're not talking about the attack, obviously, but just I would, number one, she was my first player that I wanted to talk about and say, yeah, you know what? 100% you have got this. I owe you an apology. I was wrong about you. And then the next person I wanted to talk about was Keira Walsh, who has basically shut down the midfield for England. I don't think, especially, you know, we'll get to Norway in a second, but especially in that Norway game, she didn't give Graham Hansen time on the ball, space on the ball to do anything. It didn't matter. And, we've talked about Norway, we're talking about Austria, we're talking about Northern Ireland. It didn't matter who she was up against. She completely took over that midfield. And, I'm a Liverpool fan, right? So the last time I've seen a midfielder take over a game like that and just completely dominate proceedings is with Steven Gerrard. That's the one that comes to mind for me, right? Obviously, there's been, she's not exactly a Steven Gerrard type, but the way she just completely commands that whole area is amazing to watch. And, I hope I haven't seen it online yet, but I hope someone actually sits down and actually plots out her positioning tactically and what she's doing in the spaces and stuff like that for England, because I think she's doing an amazing job. So she was second. Third was Alicia Russo, who, in my opinion, should be getting more time. That goal that she scored against, was it Northern Ireland?
Yes.
Whew.
Listen, that
was a goal. That was, I remember when I was watching the game, because I didn't watch all of it. I was like in and out. I wasn't at home when that game was going on, so I was in and out of the game. But I was watching the game at that point, and I literally got up out of my seat. I was like, that is right now to me goal of the tournament.
Yeah,
goal of the tournament. Amazing. And I think she deserves to be on the pitch more. We'll see if that happens in the knockout stages. But yeah, she's been great as well as a super sub. And then finally, I wanted to talk about Beth Mead, who is on fire at the moment. Like genuinely on fire. And when you talk about the season that she had with Arsenal, she's actually had a really, really great season with Arsenal. It didn't end up obviously the way they wanted in terms of like trophies and stuff like that. But that
didn't. Sorry. Just had to get that out there.
Yes. Okay. Moving on. Like we can't not talk about how England is playing and not talk about Beth Mead.
Yeah.
On the other side, Lauren Hemp is done pretty well as well. But when you come to the two wingers, it's Beth Mead all the way. Just her positioning, her ability to find the pass, understanding where the spaces are and the runs that she has to make for someone like Kirby to find her. And then not only just that, when she gets into those spaces, she's picking the right choice 9 times out of 10. And how many times can you say that for, especially, in the women's game, how many times can you say that about a player? Very few of them can do that. 9 times out of 10 so far in this tournament, she's made the right pass at the right moment. So yeah, those are the 4 I wanted to touch on with England. Go ahead, André.
I think that's a very good point you made about Mead, because that's kind of always been her thing, right? Is that decision making. She hasn't always done this. And now she did it for Arsenal quite a bit. That's where she was a big key to them. But also, like, this is another level to me. Like, she's finding the spaces. And again, like we said, caveat is the competition they've come up against, but she's finding the spaces. She's just making herself a wing. And it's been amazing to see. And it's been exactly what because I think one thing that can always happen with a host team, especially in England, is that you're looking at like so much pressure, added pressure. Like a normal host countries, they want to like give that like home crowd advantage, like, right? You want to have that. In England, it's different. You get a whole lot of pressure heaped on you because you should be winning, because I suppose some fans think they birthed the sport of football. So they believe that like you should be good. Like if we have a good England team and you're playing in England, there's no reason why you should lose. And that's just a lot of unnecessary pressure. And I think it's been her energy, directness, and dynamism that's been like, we ain't got time for that. And they just go straight. She goes straight into the box, causes chaos, gets her scores, and England, the rest of the team is like, okay, cool, we got this. So like, yeah, that's a great point. I want to talk about that Russo goal because like, when that happened, I was watching that. And when it happened, it was one of those things where I was like, did she do what I think she did? And I'm thinking like the whole time while the celebrations are going on, like waiting for the replays, like, yeah, I want to see the celebrations are fine, but show me the replays. I want to make sure, I want to confirm that this happened. And if it happened the way I think it happened, how intentional was it? Because like I posted the GIF online and a lot of people were talking about the Bergkamp, making that his his goal versus Newcastle, and people were talking about the similarities. But his was a lot less intentional. Like Russo meant this every single touch and every single like the weight of the ball when she spun around and everything. It was perfectly positioned. It wasn't like a happy accident. She planned every step of that. And I was like, yo, I mean, y'all know how I feel about Ellen White. I think it's long time past for them to start relying on her. I think she's much better served in a specific, I don't think she's malleable enough as a player anymore to say, okay, if we need to attack a team this way, she can adapt. If we need to attack them this way, she can adapt. That's not really her. So to me, I'm thinking if you notice what the defense is giving you and how you're gonna have to attack it, then you bring her on and say, okay, this is what we need. We need an aerial threat. We need somebody who's gonna take up space in the box. To me, looking at the way Russo's been playing, I want to see her start. Like, and I'm hoping that this is like, I'm hoping that her performance in these in the group stages is enough to get her starts, because I think that they will do themselves a disservice if they continue to rely on Ellen White against the teams that they're going to be coming up against.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think she deserves definitely to get more time, and I think we'll touch upon that when we go on the when we discuss the bracket and stuff. And even just talking about Serena Wigman, I want to wait until we get to the bracket as well, because I feel like, again, in the group, they weren't really tested all that much, except maybe, like, to be honest, I think Austria was their biggest test, right? The first game that they played. And, I can't say that tactically this is what they're doing brilliantly and this is what they need to work on just yet, because they haven't faced a real, like, opposition yet. Yeah. So when that happens, then I'll be able to tell and be like, okay, this is what she's telling them to do, or are they executing what she's doing, what she's telling them to do, and so forth and all that. So speaking of Austria, we'll just go right ahead to them, because they finished second in the group, something that we did not expect.
No.
But fair play to them.
Yeah.
Fair play to them, because I think what I liked the most about Austria was not just the shape that they would come up with every single game, because it wasn't exactly the same for every single game. Yeah. They would change it up, they would tweak it depending on who they were facing. And each time it seemed to work. Like, okay, against England, they lost 1-0, right? But they lost through, like, literally a wonder goal. And they threatened England at times as well. You were just thinking to yourself, if they had held their nerve a little bit more when they were attacking England, they could have gotten a goal. But they've been, like, to me, just genuinely one of the most surprising teams in the tournament. Not because I wasn't expecting them to do, like, super well or whatever, because I wasn't expecting them to finish second in the group, but just the way they've played and the way they've carried out their tactics, the way they're in terms of, like, being a complete team, completely cohesive, completely in sync with each other. That's Austria. And I want to say, like, full credit to their manager, Irene Furman, who not only is able to draw up the tactical plans that she needs for each opponent, but then she's able to relay that to her players in a way that they all understand it and they all execute it exactly as it's supposed to be. So that's the first thing I wanted to touch on with Austria, is that full credit to them, and I did not expect that.
Yeah, I didn't expect that either, as y'all know, and we're going to talk about it later. I was riding with another team. Hard too, too hard, and I'm sure I'll be hearing all about that. But yeah, this Austria team is interesting because they're in the category of teams who, like, they don't have players who scare you, but they have a commitment to the system and style that they play that you do not look forward to playing them. Like, that's kind of the thing with them. Like, it is, if you're lining up against Austria, you may have the talent, but it's going to be hard to show it. Like, you're not going to run rampant on them. You're not going to, you're going to have to take chances when the rare ones come, and you're going to be, a lot of the time, banging your head against a brick wall is kind of like what you got to prepare yourself for. You just got to endure it, like, go through it and understand, like, this is not going to be easy. It's going to hurt as a game. It's going to be frustrating as a game. And it's a good tactic to have, particularly in a tournament like this, because it's all about denying goals and then taking your chances. And they're just talented enough to be able to get the ball in the back of the net when they needed to. And they were able to do that. And that's why they're moving on. So, like, I have been impressed. Like you said, the coaching, it's been great. They've been able to solve problems in terms of tightening their shape to make sure that they weren't able to be beaten severely in certain phases of play that the opposition was good at, and handled it very well. I mean, that game against Norway was just composed. It was like one of your, it was a well for like defensive coaches.
Yeah.
Excellent. Get out there. limit chances, get your goal, 1-0, get out of there. And perfect. Nailed it, and it hurt my soul, but they nailed it.
And it's interesting to say that, we're talking about that game against Norway, but I mean, just generally speaking, Manu Zinsberger, when you think about that game against Norway, she didn't actually have all that much to do.
No.
Which is a testament to the people in front of her who were so organized and they knew exactly what they were doing, that they limited what Norway were trying to do and made sure that she didn't have to do a whole lot. Like the first game against England, she was definitely the busier of the goalkeepers in that game, right?
Yeah.
And credit to her, she was like outstanding.
Mm-hmm.
Outstanding. Like we talked about, it took like a seriously great goal to beat her that day. She was that great. And it just carried on throughout the tournament. Like she's just been in great form. And it's like one of those moments where, you know how sometimes you'll have a player who, when they're playing for their club, they're good, but sometimes they have that mistake in them, whatever, right?
Yeah.
But the minute they step into their shirt for their country or the jersey for their country, it's like they suddenly become Superman or super, I guess in this case, Superwoman, Supergirl, I don't know. But yeah, and she was just like, that's Zinsberger. So far in this tournament, she's been exactly like that. Like she's pulled out the cape and everything, and she's like ready to go to make sure that her team, despite what everyone else around them is saying, her team is going to go as far as she can possibly take them. And apart from her, I also wanted to mention Sarah Kunzinka, who I didn't know a whole lot about coming into the tournament. I did know a bit about her, but not a whole lot. And then after the game against England, because she really, really did impress me against England. So I was like, okay, the next time Austria play their remaining 2 matches, I'm going to pay attention to her. And again, kind of like what we talked about with Walsh, she just controls the midfield. Yeah. She really does. You've got people like Sarah Ladzerl, who's in front of her, bombing forward to help Bila, I've forgotten her name, but Bila, to like try and, give numbers in the box and stuff like that, which means that Kunzinka is the one who has to sit back and protect the back line. And she's done it to like an nth degree the entire tournament so far. She's made sure that whoever she's up against, like we talked about with Norway, she was up against Graham Hansen, didn't have any problems with her, not one. Yeah. And even against England, like, okay, yes, Fran Kirby isn't 100%, she's had her injury problems and all that kind of stuff. But again, against England, she was coming up against a really solid midfield and she held her own. So I just wanted to give a shout out to her. She's really, really impressed me so far.
That Norway game, like you said, Zinsberger was not busy. 2 shots on target for Norway. That was just like, again, we will talk about Norway, but that's impressive by Austria's standards. Like that is very impressive to be able to do that. Like, yeah, that Norway team was reeling basically from the first kick, but like that is an impressive performance. And yeah, you're right. I mean, and I like Zinsberger's energy has been great too.
Yeah.
Like that, even like the clip of the goal, her meeting Mead, teammates. And you got to hear that and see that interaction when she scored the goal on it. Like you say, it was a great goal, but it's one of those that the keeper is annoyed at conceding, of course. But you saw their interaction afterwards, and I thought that was amazing. So like, yeah, I mean, just they've got some. They're one of those teams just knows what they're doing. I mean, they have a structure, they have a plan, they know exactly who they are, and they stay within that and do it very well. And I think you're absolutely right to point out the central midfield, the defensive midfielder there, who's just has some tough assignments. I mean, honestly, despite Norway's form, those are some ballers. Like 1v1, those are some ballers. And shutting down Caroline Graham Hansen is not easy. The only other time we saw that was the Champions League when Selma Basha did it on the wing. That is not an easy thing to do. So, I just have to credit this team. I think it's incredible that they got this far, and I can't, if you predicted it, shout out to you. I'll say that. Exactly. It wasn't me. I respect you.
You probably made a lot of money.
Right. I hope you put some money on it, because like if you have that conviction, I sure didn't. I was like, man, if I choose, I was like, am I really gonna do that? Nah, I can't do that. I can't get on here and talk to the people and say I'm choosing Austria. I can't do that. And I wish I did, but that's not how I was feeling, so I didn't do it.
Yeah. So now we got to talk about the heartbreakers, man.
Yeah.
The team that you were riding with from day one, that we all warned you about. We said, Andre, don't do this to yourself. Don't do this to yourself. And you did it anyways.
I wanted to believe. You have no idea how bad I wanted to believe. Oh my God. Oh, I'm so annoyed. I'm just so frustrated. Like, and see, this is the wild thing is this. Okay. So like everybody knew their attack. Great
Just in
name.
case everyone is wondering who we're talking about, it's
Norway.
Norway.
So, yeah, okay, yes. No, we're talking about Norway. But yeah, everybody knows, like in the attack, great. Like, and I wanted to see that front line, I wanted to see Graham Hansen, I wanted to see Egerberg, I wanted to see Wrighton, I wanted to see all of them, right? I thought that was like, that's an incredible, like, attacking trio. So I wanted to see it out there. And everybody knew, and I knew, and was willing to concede up front, like, yes, if you look at a flaw, this team is their defense. And we knew that. Problem is, I didn't realize it was going to be this bad. I thought like they'd get in some shootouts, like you mess around and you have to win like 4-2 or something versus Austria, or like you get into some I expected like them to score goals despite the defense leaking goals. I expected them to be able to score goals. Problem is, what happened with me and what kind of got caught is that they had like, I mean, and we know their coach already resigned, like he already gone. So like, but no plan, no. I what was it? I think I tweeted it. I think it was in the England game. You have that front attacking trio, and I think they only had like what, one shot one shot on target. And then I just mentioned against Austria, they only had two. Like, I understand that you struggle defensively, and that brings pressure to the midfield. And the midfield feels like they have to stay back and protect, and that can leave your attack isolated. But at some point, doesn't the ball just find itself into some space and you can run onto it and you can attack? If you're pressing, or if the other team, press them into a bad decision or an errant pass, and then you have that magnificent attack that's running with numbers, like you just expect that at some point, even if they have few chances, given the quality that they have in attack, that they're going to be able to do it. And this is why I'm like, I actually give the attackers a break, because that stuff did not happen. It was all midfield and it was all defense, and they were not able to rely on any aspect of it across the pitch to have any sort of control, any sort of build-up play, anything at all that you need to just simply get the ball, even if you're not creating chances, just delivering the ball forward to the attacker so that they can go and create themselves, because they can do it. Between like the trio of them, they can go and do it. But I mean, yeah, another thing was Graham Hansen was playing like the 10 sometimes, and it was just like maybe not the best use of her. There were just so many weird decisions, a frustrating tournament overall. I mean, I'm so upset. I wanted to believe. I really thought this team had it. I thought Egerberg coming back was going to be like a really big, like a massive thing. Like, you've been waiting for this for years, and it's something that's been great that they've been able to take the steps to improve. She comes back. You have informed talent. Gul Wrighton was amazing, especially in the second half for Chelsea. Caroline Graham Hansen been very good for multiple seasons. Like, you have excellent players, and you expect to be like, okay, I think I said it before, Egerberg has that dog in her. Like, we always like Norway, sometimes you can see a little soft, but with Egerberg, you expect like, okay, that's somebody who can really like get them together. She was looking around like, I don't know what to do. And I felt bad for her. I was like, no, don't do that to Ada. She just came back. This what y'all gonna do? This what y'all gonna do to her? Like, I was so hurt just the whole time. And like, you're right, you warned me. I'll never do it again. I'll say that. I don't care if they ever, the lead up to any international tournament, I don't care if they win every game 10-0. I am not but trusting them to get out of any group at all. They're gonna have to earn it to me for like the rest of my life. This hurt. So I'm gonna say, I ain't Norwegian. I don't know why I hurt like this, but I hurt. I'm so upset.
So okay, so the first thing I wanted to talk about with Norway is I'm gonna like work my way up to the manager, because there's a lot to discuss about him. Yeah. But I'm gonna start from like the basic bottom line for me, right? And this is going to sound like a strange sort of tangent to come into it with, but I think it's important to note that culture is a big, big thing, especially at international tournaments. The culture around your team, the culture around the players, the culture between, the coaching staff, the chemistry that the coaching staff and the players have, or the chemistry that the roster of players have together. That's huge. And you and I, as people who, well, you more than me, because I'm not actually American, but because we've watched the US WNT for such a long time, we know how important that culture is, right? And then, we always hear about how Americans, the American team, they always talk about how, or before the Olympics at least, that they had this culture that no matter what, we're going to give it everything until the final whistle. Doesn't matter if we end up losing at the final whistle, but as long as we put everything into it, like literally the last sweat dropping down, everything, like we got to put everything we have into trying to win the game if you're in a losing position, or if you're in a winning, making sure that you win the game, right? And that was not even close to present with Norway. No. Nothing. They literally had nothing. And it's strange to think, because when you think about the players that they have in their roster, these are all players who play for big teams and big leagues, who've been through like tough situations before with their clubs, but for whatever reason couldn't bring that kind of mentality that they have with their clubs to the country. And I think the main thing with that is that if it's not there with the manager, like if that culture, if that mentality isn't there with the manager, it has to be with the players. And if it's not a culture within the team, within the players, then if both the players and the manager don't have it, you're in trouble. Because like we've talked about before, especially with Jill Ellis, for example, sometimes it felt like the team was winning in spite of her, right? Instead of because of her. With Norway's case, there wasn't enough talent, or the talent wasn't put in position to be able to win in spite of their manager. So you have someone like you talked about yourself, that Hegerberg, she has that dog in her, right? When you see it with Leon, like you can see it clear in her eyes, right? That she is not going to let anything stop her from trying to win this game. With Norway, you looked at her and she was completely bemused. Like she didn't know where to go, left or right, or drop or stay forward, like stay up, or like she didn't know anything. And usually when that situation happens, a lot of players will turn and look to their manager for guidance, right? Like you're a Chelsea supporter, I'm a Liverpool fan, right? We've had managers at our clubs where you can say that if something bad is going on the pitch, we know that the manager is going to do the right thing, or he's going to say the right thing to galvanize the players and then change whatever that result is. Not once did I ever think that was coming from Sean at all. And because of that, the players had to rely on themselves. But the problem is, if the players are not put in the position where they can say, okay, it doesn't matter what's going on around me, I know what I'm doing. I know the position I'm in, and I'm used to this position. I know exactly what to do in this position. Therefore, whatever the manager is saying to me, I can push it aside because it's not working, and we'll figure things out by ourselves. They couldn't even do that. Because especially, I'm gonna try to say her name right. The left back for Norway. I'm gonna try and say it right. Is it Julie Blackstad? Blackstad? Thank you. If you talked about feeling sorry for Hegerberg, if there was someone I felt genuinely sorry for, it was her. Because she got basically put into the deep end with no life raft. That's it. She was told to play in a position that if it had been a 3-back, I could say, okay, I see why you're putting her in like that left wing back position, because that makes sense. But it wasn't. It was a 4-back with one of your central defenders who hasn't played in like eons, right? How many appearances did Maren Mailde make at Chelsea?
I was going to say, that's the other thing. Like, just in terms of like getting your team together and ready to play a big tournament, you can't rely on players that are out of form like that. Maren Mailde, I think she had maybe, I totaled it up at one point. I think it was 54 total minutes for Chelsea.
Oh my goodness, that's even less. A lot. That's even less than I thought.
In the league. It was. She may have been in some cup matches or whatever more, but in the league it was 54 total minutes, I believe. And it was just like bad. Like you can't. As much as I love her, you can't rely on a player that just has not been playing.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying is that, like we've talked about, sometimes especially with the American team, right? There were instances where you could clearly tell that the players have said, okay, the coaching is not working. So we're going to figure this by ourselves. We're going to literally use our willpower with this game. But if you don't have that already within your group, because if we talk about Norway, 5 years ago now, right? At Euro 2017, this is exactly the same situation that happened then with the same manager. Not exactly the same personnel, but the exact same kind of core group, the exact coaching staff, the exact environment, the exact results. So especially after they got hit by England in the mouth, let's be honest, they got punched in the mouth. They had nothing.
Multiple times.
I heard that they flew in a sports psychologist or something like that to speak to the team.
Yeah.
But a couple of hours with the sports psychologist is not going to fix that.
Yeah.
That was something that had to be a culture, within the team that would make them rise above that whole debacle, right?
Yeah.
When you look at that, when you look at the fact that culturally there wasn't anything in place to prepare them for that kind of shock, right? That's the first thing. And then so when that happens, when you're in a situation like that, you're a player, you look to your manager. And this is where Norway they had nothing. They had nothing. And I don't know if you managed to catch any sort of post-match reaction from Norway after that England game. It was tense. They were not happy.
Yeah.
Let me just put it like that. When you look at John André, he was one of the post-match, he was one of the pundits throughout the tournament for Norway, right? And I didn't catch all of his post-match analysis, but after the game against England and after the game against Austria, he was not happy. And he was pointing out all the things that we on social media were talking about and things that he was saying that, if these were things that were evident before the tournament, why were they never addressed, right? And I have, I think I said it in my preview, but one of my really good friends, who's Karia Apple Squabble on Twitter, she's my Scandinavian source, everything Scandinavian, I always go to her. But I remember in April, some article dropped about the tournament, about the roster, stuff like that. And some players in Norway or some Norwegian players who weren't called up for the team, spoke up about the culture and how people are selected to that roster. And it was concerning. And that was before the tournament. And I was like, okay, if this is everything that's going on, this could prove to be an issue. Because they were talking about how if you're not in a certain select group, you don't get selected by the coach. And that's been that way since he came in. If you don't play for certain leagues, he doesn't even bother to look at you. And so I remember talking to her and asking her and saying, I know that Norway's backline is problematic. Do they just not have the players to be able to bring in like proper defenders, proper fullbacks, proper what's going on with that? And she told me, it's like, no, because she watches a lot of Scandinavian leagues. She's very familiar with a lot of Norwegian players. And she's like, no, the players are there. They're just not being picked. They're just not being picked. So you come to a situation where you have a winger like Blackstad playing as a left back. Again, it's like, managers in women's football drive me crazy.
Yes.
So many of them drive me crazy because it's like the answer is an obvious one, and yet you choose to ignore it every single time. It's the most frustrating thing about following women's football. Oh, one of many.
Yeah.
But it's like, as a person who's a genuine football fan from like birth, right? Watching the things that you can clearly see. I'm not even like the greatest tactical mind. I'll be straight up and admit it. Like, I can tell you that something is wrong with the formation, but if you ask me to break it down, I'll just say, I don't know, X player did not do this, and that's it. That's all as far as I can break it down, because I just don't know how to explain myself tactically. But even I can see that, okay, this is just not the right move. Putting Caroline Graham Hansen, who is excellent on the wing, and playing her as a 10. What are we doing with that?
You see her like nutmeg 3 consecutive players with that run on the wing. I'm like, that's what she does.
And it's the mad thing is that in the first game, she played on the wing. And then he moved it to the middle. And I'm like, what is this?
Yeah.
And then he also played a 3-back. And then for whatever reason decided, you know what? I don't want to do that anymore. I'm going to go back to my 4-back. And I mean, now we're swinging back to the actual coach, right? Because we talked about the culture of the players and so forth. Because, yes, we're going to talk, a lot of the blame does fall on him. But at the same time, you're kind of like, what happened with the players? They're just like, they physically and mentally just gave up.
You know, yeah, I think that the England game was hard. Like that is just brutal to recover from, and shatters players' confidence and everything. I mean, that's one of those games where it becomes like it's fun for England, but after like the fifth goal, it's just really hard to watch because you're looking at a team that is being so let down by the decisions and the situation the manager put them in, and they have no way of getting out of it. I mean, they could have played, if they would have played a second 90 minutes, the score would have been like 20-0. I mean, it was that bad. Like it was never going to get better. There was never anything that they were going to be able to do about that because of just they were outmatched and the game plan was they were totally exposed. And that's where I feel bad about, and why I think I was so frustrated and so upset at the coach and so glad that he's gone because Blackstad is 20 years old. To play her at that position, an unfamiliar position in a big tournament, a European tournament, at this stage, this level of women's football is just wrong to do. I mean, not everybody's Crystal Dunn, and they ain't even do that to Crystal Dunn when she was okay. So I'm like, to me, that's just like such poor decision making, and I hope that Blackstad like can forget about this.
Yeah.
Like just memory flash it out of her brain because she does not need that going forward in her career. She is a good, exciting young player, and she does not deserve for people to think of her name and think of her performance at left back in this championship. It just isn't right. So I'm like, that part of it frustrates me, and I do have to issue a correction. Mara Mielda did not play just 54 minutes. I shorted her too. She played 56 total minutes
Oh
in the
man.
league. No starts, four appearances. So
Oh man.
4 substitute appearances, 56 total minutes.
Honestly, that's terrible. That's much worse than I thought. I thought she made way more appearances than that, but not like a lot. That's terrible.
It's
That's
outrageous.
Terrible.
It's outrageous. And like you said, I mean, it definitely tracks because I sat there thinking to myself, like, Norway usually has a pretty good pipeline of players. So I just don't understand how Maria Thorstadter and Mara Mielda are your best center back pairing. That just doesn't track to me. Like, and he never changed it. Like, that's the other thing. Like, you didn't even try to do a couple things and like put somebody else in there, even for getting experience. It's just like, no, I'm going with these two, and it clearly was not working. So like, to me, you have to do something else. And just like, we've been having this issue. Like you mentioned the US women's national team, like they're a team in transition, and we've been really upset at the manager there for not being able to like make that transition even quicker. I mean, compared to this dude, I mean, like, come on, like this is just, and it's putting players in positions like that. Just, it really frustrates me because you mess with players' careers. Like, he's out of a job, and he had probably a job. I don't know if he deserved it in the first place. Doesn't seem like it. But I'm sure somebody will hire him at some point. But some of these players are going to take a while. It's going to take a while to get over that. And that's why I feel for Blackstad as well. Like, I'm really glad you brought her up because I don't want to bash her and her performance consistently because that happened and we all saw it on TV. Like, it wasn't great, but there are reasons why. And she didn't really deserve to be put in that position. And it's frustrating to see. I mean, it's just really frustrating. The team is too talented for this. And it's just a catastrophic tournament. And it's really all you can say about it. Just catastrophic.
And I mean, if anyone wants to read like more kind of in-depth breakdown on the whole Martin Shorgan thing, Sophie Lawson, a good friend Sophie, did a piece for XI today on his resignation, and she kind of just broke down everything that happened, explains why he was hired in the first place, because he actually has the backing of the players still, because apparently he's a good guy or whatever. I don't know. But yeah, so like a lot of players, defend him still, and they really like him, and he brought along the likes of Stina Blackstenius and Pernille Harder and stuff like that. So he's a well-known Swedish coach who's well-respected by the players, and that's why he got the job in the first place. But yeah, Sophie just breaks it down from beginning to end, essentially. So if anyone wants to kind of figure out exactly what happened, that's a great piece to look up and to read as well. So let's move on from Norway, because even talking about them makes me very frustrated, very, very frustrated.
Yeah.
Just because, again, like I'm one of those people where when you can see obvious issues
Yes.
and they're just not being addressed, it drives me crazy. And I try on my Twitter, I try to keep it calm and not go off on managers or on players, because I'm like, I don't know the behind the scenes. I don't know what's being told to who and all that. I don't know what kind of coaching that they're doing and training and all that kind of stuff. So I try to hold back, but it's so frustrating when you can see the obvious issues. And a couple of other managers we're going to discuss do the same thing, and it drives me up the wall. So moving on from Norway, let's just go ahead and very quickly wrap up Group A with Northern Ireland, who, as expected, we didn't think they were going to get past the group stage. I think both of us were pretty much saying, you know what, they'll give it a go, but we don't see them doing a whole lot in this tournament, and that proved to be the case. They didn't really. I mean, they scored against Norway, but as
sure
shown, as shown by other games, Norway's backline was there for the taking by anyone.
Yeah.
So
correct.
yeah, but I mean, I'm really happy for them that they were able to qualify, in this tournament. And the funny thing is that their World Cup qualification, if it's not the World Cup qualification, then their qualification for the Euros was exactly the same teams they faced in the group. So I thought maybe they had a bit more of a chance because they played these teams. They're a little bit more familiar with, how they work and stuff like that. But that didn't really happen. So Northern Ireland, thanks for coming to the party. Good luck in the future.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, they got a goal. It was good. It was fun. It's always fun to see a team like that get a goal, have a good celebration with it as well. So, they understand what they were there for, and what that, like, getting there was an achievement. I'm gonna put it that way. And that's not a slight to them at all. Like, that's just where they're at the moment, and getting there is achievement. And it seems like they're heading in the right direction. The only thing I think they need to do is duct tape the mouth of their coach. And
I wasn't gonna talk about that, but
I'll just leave that right there. We can move on.
Yeah, they need to get a filter for him.
Yes.